Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
And we're back. You know, time flies when you're having fun. That first segment went by fast.
It did.
And we are continuing on. Now we got Ed Kampf. Ed, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing great. Renee covered everything, so you want to talk about sports or the weather? Or
Well, we know you have a wealth of information out there.
Let's talk about the current administration. Let's go there.
I got nothing that would be allowed on this station.
He's got nothing on air. Take him off air. It's a different deal.
There you go.
When you're angry.
Well, Ed, who are you with, by the way?
I'm with Georgetown Mortgage.
Okay.
Been with them for 2 years. Been in the business since 1997. We've been addressing the concerns of the CFPB TRID documentation coming into effect and strategizing around that.
The acronyms again. I have to explain what TRID is.
Define what TRID is for everybody.
I can't use the words. It was an attempt, and it's an attempt. We'll see whether it's a successful attempt by the CFPB. To streamline the process, make the truth in lending and the good faith estimate and the closing documents all consolidated. They call it the what is it? I just drew a blank. Know what you owe. They call it the Know What You Owe program.
But TRID actually stands for the truth in lending, RESPA. Integrated disclosure. That's what it stands for. That's actually what I was going for there. So.
But there is one thing I wanted to add that you discussed in the last segment. You talked about, Joe asked about first-time home buyers. I consider anybody who has not purchased a home within the last 5 years a first-time home buyer.
Right.
It's a completely different process than it was before.
Right. Well, and technically speaking, the way most of the programs define it is anybody who hasn't owned a home in the past 3 years. But I would agree, there's a lot of individuals out there that are getting back into the market right now. They've owned their home for 7, 8, 10, 15, whatever many years. They're getting back in the market. And the one thing that we see a lot of times, those individuals don't understand where it stands today. It wasn't that difficult when I bought a home 10 years ago. And I tell everybody is, guess what? You could give a dog a home 10 years ago. They could qualify for a mortgage. So, that's a very good point to address that right there. How do you address some of those individuals getting back into the market who really are, quote unquote, first-time homebuyers?
Well, I tell them that during the process, they're gonna first like me, and then I'm gonna dig into their past. They'll end up loathing me, and then I'll cross the finish line with them, and then they'll like me again.
Right.
So it's a grueling process. We verify everything. It's basically the borrower is committing fraud, and we have to find where that fraud is. And if we do not find that fraud, then we have to.
You heard it here first.
Absolutely. Then we have to prove that we're not committing fraud.
Right.
And then once that is passed, then we're on to getting the loan closed.
And that's a very good way of putting it. All borrowers are guilty until proven innocent, right?
That's right. Well, the verification process, we verify employment, we verify their Social Security number, we verify their tax returns, we verify their assets, and then we have to verify the house.
Right.
Yeah.
But one of the things I would say, though, and not to, is that it has created a lot stronger market. Well, I agree with you. We verify more than anything. In general, the borrowers that are out there and individuals who are qualifying for home, it's a stronger market. And it's creating stronger neighbors. And I've always said, Joe talks about being good steward of your credit. I tell everybody it's also important about being good steward within your community. And we're creating greater communities, individuals who are buying homes and your neighbors that you see moving in and moving out. Guess what? Those are individuals that are less likely to foreclose. Now, a foreclosure most of the time is based upon an individual who can't afford to pay because of a lot of other factors. It could be because oil and gas is going down, because they're losing their jobs, whatever it might be. But generally speaking, that was one of the big things that we tried to do, is avoid the amount of foreclosures in the future by making it harder for individuals to qualify up front.
Well, your neighborhood's nicer than mine. Let me just say that.
I hope your neighbors are listening.
But yeah, we delve deep with our borrowers, and it's not just about income, assets, and credit. It's about stature. It's about the credit history. We look at the credit history, and the credit history defines character, which is not a true representation, but that's basically the past that we delve in. Another point that I wanted to make was that you asked about the rates rising, and I saw I see this study every year that shows oil and their correlation to interest rates. You want to know when interest rates are rising? When oil rates, the price of oil rises. Right. So, and that's a good thing for our city. Paying $65 a gallon or a barrel for an oil, that Houston is far in far better shape.
I would absolutely agree. But one of the things, one of the things that I would agree with you, that used to be a great correlation. But then when oil and gas still went to $120, above $100 a barrel, we were still sitting at 3.5% interest rates. That's what I was getting to. That the traders really have now taken over. And a lot of the old way of looking at where rates were going to go or how they're being maintained have all changed. That whole market has changed. Now, one of the things that the great Christy Borden, by the way, said on Facebook here is that you understand a lot of the legislative issues that are going on within the real estate community and within the mortgage side of things. What have you and Christy been working on recently? What's going on that's new?
Yeah, Christy, why you drop me in the grease like that? Well, I'm past president of the Greater Houston Association of Mortgage Brokers. I joined that association in 2006 when I decided it wasn't just enough to complain about legislative issues that were coming down the pike. I wanted to be part of the voice, fighting for my consumer. And our association goes to D.C. Once a year, meeting with legislators, walking the halls of Congress, representing our borrowers. We tell them the negative effects that Dodd-Frank has. We have a better qualified borrower, but there is no reason why someone self-employed, an engineer or doctor, who doesn't show a lot of income on his tax returns, but has very strong assets, shouldn't qualify to buy a house, especially when their credit shows a strong history of paying on time. So I'm not as gracious to accept a lot of the good that came from Dodd-Frank. Yeah, a lot of good. It cleaned out the industry. But, we clean out ourselves occasionally. But they went a little bit too far. They reached a little bit too far.
I loved that when it first came into play. I had a friend of mine who had several million in liquid assets, but couldn't get approved to purchase a house because she didn't work. She had no job history, and she literally ended up writing a check for the house and said, "Here you go." And after she was getting thrown around, it was early on where I think it was a lot. There was a lot more conservative after the crash. It was kind of hard for a lot of people to get loans. But I was just like, holy cow, this person has multiple millions in cash available. They literally wrote a check for the house but couldn't get approved for it for financing.
Well, Dodd-Frank,
that's kind of nutty to me.
It is, and that's a sore subject with me. Dodd-Frank has basically taken common sense out of lending.
Meaning we got some uncommon sense legislation from the government?
Oh,
what?
Really?
Those sunny beaches. But, the fear right now is, can you close a loan within 30 days? And with extraordinary realtors, absolutely. With the realtors who lack in communication with their lender, it's going to be a problem. But, my company had a meeting earlier this week. We've been on this mission since January to close a loan within 3 weeks. Beefing up underwriters, beefing up processors. I'm proud that they've created a very low ratio of originator to processor, but we have more paperwork we have to deal with, so we have to deal with our clients faster. Pre-qualifying them is not just having a conversation about income, assets, and credit over the phone. Send me your documents, because when you get a sales contract, you have to hit the ground running, and last-minute changes, that will determine whether you're closing 30 days or 45 days. So we're going to put the onus on realtors to keep their lender in the loop on any small change, because it's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah, my number one fear is that there's going to be a change. There's some repairs to be done, and the seller doesn't want to do repairs. So I said, look, we'll pay something towards your closing costs, and that'll happen like a day before closing. And, of course, then that's going to change the APR, which is going to, of course, cause another 3-day delay.
Well, it is. One of the things, and for all those listening out there, one of the things that's happening, a lot of things are already there. I mean, we still have to disclose. We still have our 373 rule right now. You have to disclose out when you have a full loan application within 3 days of receiving that application. You can't close prior to 7 days. If anything changes that impacts the truth in lending greater than an eighth of a point, has to be redisclosed in waiting period 3 days. So all that's in there. Now, the big thing that's happening is they're changing, obviously, some of the naming, but they're also now changing the HUD, and they're taking it to a closing disclosure, which is actually generated by the mortgage companies nowadays, or can be. And most of the mortgage companies are probably going to everyone here is shaking their heads, which I assume that means all the mortgage companies are generating them. So the big difference really right now is a consumer, when they're going to go to closing, is not seeing their numbers, their final numbers for the first time. They have their numbers in hand and have supposedly already reviewed them. Where that's coming into play is that no longer at the closing table can you sit there after that 3-day period and say, by the way, we just did a walkthrough today and found an issue, and here's a $2,000 credit that has to go on the HUD now because we negotiated these repairs, because that's going to impact. So things are going to have to be rethought. It's not going to really, and we were talking about this during one of the breaks, I don't think it's going to increase any type of close times unless you have an agent who lacks on that communication side of things. What it's really going to do, though, it's going to put everybody, when you go to closing now, they're actually going to be closing, or they're actually going to be consummating the loan, as they say. And you're not going to have to sit there and worry about what's going to happen when I do show up at the title company today. And I think those are some good changes that we're going to be seeing.
Yeah, one thing I can't explain, and I don't know what their logic is on this, but on the closing document, they took out the numbers. And the numbers are important with the communication between the lender and the title company. We'll see the transmission of emails of move line 812 to line 813. Right. Now it's, go to the third paragraph down and take this fee and move it 2 paragraphs up. So there's going to be a learning process.
All going to be in alphabetical order.
Yes, that is correct.
There's a learning process, but RESPA required the review of the HUD 24 hours in advance.
Yes.
We didn't necessarily follow that for those who got the docs late to title company.
Almost never followed that.
That's right. So we'll see what happens. There'll be a 60-day trial period. Everybody's running, not knowing. The CFPB can pass rules as they go, so we'll see what happens. But right now, lenders should be practicing getting documents to the title company 3 days before closing. We've got to start that process now. Yep. And we were granted an extra 60 days from an administrative error from the CFPB. They sold it as, we heard you're calling, asking for a delay, and we listened, but that's a bunch of baloney. They basically failed to report a document to Congress, and the penalty is 60 days. So that was shoved down their throat.
You got to love the spin.
You have to love it. It happens
the
every
CFPB.
time.
They changed their name to the CFPB.
Yes.
They're no longer the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau.
Right.
They're known as the CFPB, kind of like the Mafia.
That is the Ed Kampf. Ed, how can we reach you, by the way?
My cell is 713-298-1449, and it's never turned off.
That is great. That's Ed Kampf. He's with Georgetown Mortgage. We are coming up against a break. We're going to have Brian Armis on
Already?
next. Absolutely. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I insist.